Hello, ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guests. He's Sheik Meah. I'm Rich Shane. This is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Sheik, welcome to the podcast.
So glad to be here, Rich. Thank you so much.
I'm glad you're here. I'm also glad Dawn Ranieri's here. We're going to talk beer today. Sheik, you are a beer connoisseur. You had your own beer podcast. Talk beer with us for a few minutes.
Sure, yeah. So going back, I did have a beer podcast, and part of that was because at one time I was not a beer connoisseur. And I'll give you an example. I used to think that I hated IPAs. What I didn't understand is how many different IPAs there are. You got your Boston IPAs, your West Coast IPAs, double IPA, triple IPA, all that stuff. For me, when I discovered that, and saw how many different options there are, how many different breweries were popping up just in our area, and how many different kind of flavors, that it wasn't just the one or two flavor notes that you're used to, or it's a light beer just with orange. It really drew me in. And so that made me want to explore a little bit more all the things you could do with beer, all the different grains and vegetables and everything else you could do as far as to make beer. And that made me really get into it and understand what I like, what I don't like, and then maybe even go back and see, has my flavor profile changed? And it's become very similar to how many foodies are. That's kind of how I am when it comes to beer.
And what was the name of the podcast?
So that was called Delco Dive. That was the name of the podcast. It was supposed to be a play on words, so to speak, because we had all these fancy $10 and $15 beers we were trying in a very trashy Delco way in my basement. So instead of saying, oh, well, the flavor profile of this is amazing, we would talk about poundability. How many of these can you drink on the Jersey Shore beach? That was kind of our way of going into stuff. And it was also a lot of fun, too, because we were able to talk about a lot of local breweries, such as your 2SPs, your Sterling Pigs, your Evil Geniuses, and what have you, and really bring to light that, hey, just because some people might think, as my brother would say, they're hoity-toity, not for me kind of beers. No, they're for everybody. And you might discover something that is your new favorite beer. And that's what we were able to bring to that podcast. And I really enjoyed it.
You and I have had several conversations about beer in the past. And we've also had conversations about Comic-Cons and PopCons. And you're affiliated with the Delco PopCon. And that got us thinking. Actually, you came up with the idea of there are some interesting beers out there that have characters or are taking off on TV shows or cartoons or different things like that. There's a great event coming up here in Delaware County, Delco. So those that are out of the general Philadelphia area, why don't you introduce them to what you've been working on and all the things that people can expect coming up in the next couple of months?
Sure. So the Great Delco PopCon is coming up on June 14th, Flag Day. And it was something that we are in our third year. It used to be called the Great Media Comic-Con. It has now expanded outside of Media, Pennsylvania, because it has grown so much. Pretty much we now have 10 times the space of what we had before. And it's going to be at Aston Iceworks, which is going to be wonderful. A lot more parking, a lot of fun stuff. We're going to have a ton of different guests there, from horror-themed people such as our buddy Jane Stokes, who played Jason in some of the Friday the 13th movies, to people like Tim Russ, who's been part of Star Trek, to Bruce Boxleitner, who is the Tron in all the Tron movies, and also big name in Babylon 5 for all our people who like to watch your 80s shows, Scarecrow and Mrs. Kane. He was the lead in that. and a few other interesting people too. Some voiceover actors from the Peanuts gang. We have someone from the Silent Hill movies and from the video games. We got a bunch of stuff going on, not to mention a whole lot of local vendors selling things you're only going to get there. So tying that all in, what's interesting with what you see with beer is that a lot of us who are of a certain age grew up seeing Happy Meals and, all branded with things like Ninja Turtles or your favorite TV shows. But it was really just the same burger now comes with, a Leonardo toy from Ninja Turtles. Well, beer companies have started doing that same kind of thing, except they're doing something a little different in the sense that they try to match a flavor profile with what they're doing. And I think that's something so unique. So they're building off of nostalgia. They're building off of what's popular now or what might have been popular before. They're going into things such as what you would see pop cons and comic cons do, where they talk about space exploration or toys or video games. And it's so unique because I find myself, and I thought maybe it was just me, but I've talked to several people who are now drawn to the label on the can. Not even sure what it is. And then they start looking into, what is this? Is this a sour beer? Is this a porter? Is this an IPA? And even if it's something that they normally wouldn't like, they're willing to try it. And I think that's just so unique of what's happening, both nationally and locally.
Tying in that theme, you brought us a couple of beers today. Talk about the beers and, like you talked about, the branding, the labeling, and what it seems that the breweries are trying to accomplish with this. I'm going to call it a genre, because it does separate itself from any beer out there. It makes it unique, almost collectible in a way.
Absolutely. And you know what? We'll go one by one. So I'm actually going to start with something from a local brewery, Philadelphia brewery, Evil Genius. Evil Genius, all their beers seem to have some weird names, right? One thing that usually gets missed when you talk about pop cons and comic cons, especially for people who are not used to it, is they pull a lot into musical nostalgia too. So they did this whole set on 90s music. So this one's called Work Sucks, I Know, which is from the Blink-182 song. But it's a Galaxy and Citra Sessions IPA. Now, what do you know about Galaxy or Citra IPAs?
I'm going to think they're going to be bitter. I'm going to think they're going to be hoppy. I'm just going to think that they're going to have that profile right off the bat.
Now, absolutely correct. I've never had this one either, so we're trying it together for the first time here.
Okay.
But when you think about either the video from Blink-182 with that particular song, they were making fun of the genre with the fact that it was pop rock, so to speak. They were hopping around, and it was supposed to be a fun song, but also very bitter for what they're talking about. Even the title, Work Sucks, I Know. So they try to match the flavor profile with the nostalgia of what they're doing, which Evil Genius is one of my favorite breweries, just all over, let alone locally. So
I feel like we should be playing the video, watching the video at the same time. Now, this is one of the favorite things I love doing. I love hearing the sound of a can being opened.
Oh, yeah.
And then not only do we open up the can, we get to do a pour. So I'll give you that one to pour. This is what we talked about, that, with the whole comic book theme or the horror theme or all that goes into what you spoke about with this event, it becomes fun. It becomes discussionary. And you and I can banter all day. Not that the podcast is going to last that long, but we can really get into just the fun side of things and just the quirky side of things. So for both of us, we open up a can. We're expecting this to be a certain way, and you're our beer aficionado. So why don't you just lead us off here? Kick us off.
All right, cheers.
Cheers. Pardon the interruption. Thank you so much for listening to Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Could you do us a favor? Hit that follow button. It makes it easier for others to find us, and it helps us climb in the rankings. Take a screenshot of the podcast, post it, tag us, and let everyone know that you listen to the Fermented Adventure podcast. Now, back to our podcast. See, I guess I'm doing it wrong. The first thing you do is you take that one down, and I'm still sniffing.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. You can sniff and things like that.
Thank you.
If you want. Right, absolutely. I give you permission.
Can I scratch too?
Oh, sure, yeah. That very 90s scratch and sniff.
Wasn't there an Itchy and Scratchy show?
Yes, that was The Simpsons.
Did anybody do a beer?
Actually, funny you say that. Duff Beer was a beer that they had on the show. It was supposed to be kind of like Miller or something like that. A German company did Duff Beer because they had a playoff of it called Doof, but it was a long story. But a German company does Duff Beer. They send it to Orlando. They have it at the
Universal
Simpsons,
Studios.
yeah, Universal Studio. And it was for a little while nationwide too. When Moe's Tavern, the pop-up bar to celebrate the Simpsons, was in Springfield, PA, at the Springfield Mall. That's what they served there.
So they didn't call it Doof Beer.
They called it Duff Beer.
But was it Doof Man?
It wasn't
Like
Doof
they had
Man.
Duff
No,
Man? There was
no.
Doof Man. Okay.
I will off this podcast show you the Halloween costume where I dressed up as Duff Man.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun. But yeah, that was your German lager that you could think of, and they made it like in a Duff, and that's kind of what they played it to.
All right. My first take on this, even on the nose, I haven't tasted this yet, but it's a lot more ale-like to me on the nose,
Absolutely.
and not that hoppy IPA expectation. That's what I got from it.
I agree. And here's the interesting thing. So Galaxy IPAs usually are a little bit closer to a pale lager than what you would get when you would think of your heavy IPAs. The Citra is in there. It's not that strong, but it tastes more of a smoother beer that would go down as opposed to something where you'd have to sit long term that's super hoppy. And we do have a super double Citra IPA coming up. But this is more of a lighter thing, and you wouldn't expect that.
You touched on it right away, and you and I share one thing in common, that we're not, Dawn and I and Fermented Adventure, we're not big IPA fans either. But the beauty of what this does is it says, oh yeah, you thought you didn't like an IPA? You're going to like this one. And I can sit down, session IPA, this is something I can drink a number of and really get to enjoy. It's not that bitterness. I don't know why. All right, so work sucks, I know.
Right.
What do you take on the name as it applies to this beer?
So for me, like when I think of the song, right, and I think of Blink-182, it's supposed to be something that's fun, and yet at the same time make you kind of, it's when you think of a lot of times fun beers, right? And
Right.
We'll talk about there's a brewery, Dewey, that does a lot of stuff out in Delaware. They had a beer where they had glitter in the beer, and it was so you think of stuff where it's a lot of fluff. This is more of when they're talking about fun. It's 5 p.m. on a Wednesday. Work was awful. Let me just have a beer, just forget about it for a minute. And I think that's what they were going for. This is something you could picture having at a happy hour, and it not being foo-foo, fluffy, kind of stuff. It's something that you could have. You could have one, maybe a second pint with some food, and drive home, no big deal. And a lot of times when you think of IPAs, they're so heavy. Or you think of some of these, like we talked about, like the darker beers with the porters. This is not that at all. And I think they meant for it to be something kind of light, but also something that it's meant to be refreshing after work.
I would say if work sucked that particular day, but this was our job, work doesn't suck.
I agree with that.
It's, as you pointed out, this is refreshing. It's flavorful. It's got the tropical notes. It's got the citrus notes, but it's very, very light to drink. And I would really enjoy this. So work sucks, but this Evil Genius beer does not.
No, absolutely.
Okay. So I was really just expecting something different, and I'm so pleasantly surprised. So thank you, Evil Genius. That's why they're evil.
They always catch you off guard.
Right. That's why they're evil. And to your point, love their beers and love just their perspective and personality on beer.
Oh yeah. And some of the stuff, that they put there is strictly just for label, right? They have a Christmas one that's Santa. I know him from the Elf movie. It doesn't really have a whole lot of Christmas notes to it, but they almost let you know when they're trying to have fun. And this is once a little bit different. This is called, I think, the Retro Pack. There's 4 different beers in there. It's all late 90s, early 2000s kind of movie or music themed. And I take it as, all right, if you grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, you're probably like me, I'm about to be 40 years old. Man, you got stuff to do. You can't sit there and drink 8, 9 beers or have something super heavy and not be able to, something that's a 12, APV. Like, this is great.
Yeah, you got to operate a backhoe. I mean, you can't be doing 8, 9 beers
and mow it properly,
and not mow your foot or something like that.
Absolutely.
And speaking of Mo was the tavern owner.
Yeah, we pulled it all together.
We're going to keep on going. All right, Sheik, what do you got for us next?
So we went with something very light. Let's go with something that's kind of heavy. This is called Super Duper Double Citra. Now, what does that remind you of?
Bubblegum. Or, I mean, it either reminds me of being slimed or reminds me of bubblegum.
So that's what they were going for.
I'm
with
going
being slimed.
bubble.
They were going for Double Dare.
All right.
The game show.
Okay.
Now, this is a double IPA. And so, when you think of being slimed and stuff, it's kind of messy. It's kind of heavy. That's kind of what they were going for. Now, this company, Thomas Hooker Brewery, and this I don't think is super duper local, but I'm trying to say I believe they're based out of Connecticut. But it's meant to be a idea of Citra hops like we had here. But this, I think I've had here before, is supposed to be a little hoppier. It's 8%. The whole idea of the Double Dare, remember that show, the physical challenge and idea of that type of stuff. So it's supposed to be, of course, kind of fun too. Broomfield, Connecticut is where this was. And this is just 1 pint here, but this is one of those beers where 1 pint would be enough. You're talking a double IPA type stuff as well.
Okay. Should we open this one or should we introduce something? I mean, you're our tour guide. You are our Comic-Con horror movie beer aficionado.
So I'll tell you what, we'll save this one for last. We'll go from lightest to heaviest.
Good.
Okay.
We're not doing the hooker.
So we'll get to that at the end. Now, one of the other things that a lot of beer stuff is leaning to, as well as, you have your Comic-Cons and stuff, is the sci-fi theme. And so we have one here from Ghostfish Brewing Company that's called Meteor Shower. It actually won an award back in 2017 in a worldwide beer festival. And the good thing about this, it's a pale lager. It's meant to be light. It's meant to think of pale lagers that you would normally have, your Budweisers and your Millers and whatnot. It's supposed to be like that, and I actually have had this before, it's a little bit, to me, more refreshing. There's a little bit more to it. So I would like for you to try this and tell me what you think.
Okay, but you're going to try it too, right?
Of course, yes.
All right. I love their label. First of all, seeing this fish, it's a ghost fish. From far away, it looks like a very large whale.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to see it's got wings and it's got more of a, I'm going to say like a horror movie kind of a thing going on. And there's this, everybody's looking up into the sky, watching the meteor shower destroy, I don't know what it's destroying, but it's, it looks like they're just in awe of what's happening there.
So I will tell you what this is supposed to be in theory. When you look at the label, right? You could think that they're on the moon or something like that. It's actually supposed to be a backdrop for Western New York. So this is brewed out of New York, but this is like, there's a lot of, and I can't think of the exact name. It's near Lake Placid. There's a lot of mountains and stuff like that. And that's actually what the backdrop's supposed to be. But you couldn't really tell because it's a lot of darkness and shadows. So if you said it was on another planet, you'd believe it. But if you look closely, you see the streams and stuff like that as well.
All right. So the meteors are taken out in New York right there. What I love about this is a dedicated gluten-free brewery.
Mm-hmm.
They list the ingredients: millet, rice, buckwheat, corn, hops, and yeast. And it's 100% gluten-free.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. We're doing that opening thing. Thanks for not shaking up the cans.
I'll save that for next time.
All right.
All right. Now, what's interesting is that even though this is an ale and the other one that we tried was, Citra and Galaxy IPA, the color's very similar.
That one is lighter. This one seems more like an amber color to it.
You are right. It is a little
darker. More of like a, I'm not going to say like a lemon drop or something. There's actually a lot more lemon in here. Or maybe it's my background versus yours. So I don't know.
No, I definitely agree. And then when you go to sniff it, you do get a lot more of a stronger sense in a good way. It's supposed to smell like beer and fresh beer, as opposed to the Galaxy and Citra IPA we just had.
There's a little bit of sweetness to this, and I wonder if that's the corn notes to it. I also find that there's an herbaceous note to this on the nose. A lot different than what you would. That's why I love craft, because you're not making, as you alluded to, Budweiser, and you're not making Miller. You're making something of an amplified quality.
Absolutely.
Again, as a meteor shower, if I was watching that happen in my backyard, I would expect a lot from that meteor shower, as I would expect a lot from this beer.
Now, this is a little off topic, but we're going to have an opportunity where we are in the Delco area to see, I think it's 4 different meteor showers between now and August. Won't look like this scene that we see on the label, but...
So I thought you were going to have a meteor shower at the Delco PopCon.
I don't think we could pull that off, but we might try, you know?
Flavor-wise, there's a little bit of an astringent to it. A little bit of, you get like on the back. It's like, as we were talking about with the super double bubble or super duper double
Citra.
I want to, I'm going to say super duper looper, because we have the for a great adventure. I was going to say the great fermented adventure, but the great adventure not too far from here. I really, you go back to saying this kind of takes me off guard for a little bit, as what I was expecting this to be.
And what's interesting is that it doesn't get away from the fact that it's a lager. Lagers are meant to be something that you sit down, you enjoy them, you're able to drink them relatively easy. It's not something that is going to be a shock to the system, and yet at the same time you get the best of both worlds. Because let's be honest, when you drink the lagers that we're used to, your Buds, your Millers, they're kind of just there. This does let you know that, hey, you're drinking something different. There is a presence there.
It's also a light carbonation, which to me, it's a really light carbonation, something that even on any beer, I'm not that used to, so to speak. So I really enjoy that as well. This is almost like a beer cocktail in a way. It really has some notes of, I feel like there's, my mind is saying there's like an agave note to this in the beer.
See, it does almost taste like a light citrus type thing, but when you say agave, that makes sense, because there is some sort of sweetness, and I think you're right on, probably from the corn. But it does almost like they made a beer cocktail. There was something else that was in there.
Like a Michelada. I mean, I think that's beer is it a Michelada with beer in a Bloody Mary or something? I'll have to look.
It might be.
I could be way off. But
that sounds very
there's like
familiar.
a Michelada, which is like a beer cocktail in some way. So I don't know. So you're pulling these are 2 great beers. You're taking us through a tour. What's the other one there?
So this one that I have is a little heavier. Now, this is from Bald Birds Brewing Company. And Bald Birds, I believe, is Jersey Shore, PA, not Jersey Shore, Jersey. Great company. They're leaning into your video game nostalgia. So this one is called Highway Miles, and it looks very similar on the label to those games that you saw like Outrun back in the 80s.
The graphics make me think right away of Atari.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what I see.
Which Sega made Outrun, but Atari stuff as well, pole position, that's what they're going for here as far as the label. Now, if you notice, the ABV, though, is 6.7. It's a West Coast IPA. So I think what's interesting is that whenever, if you remember, playing those games in the arcade, right? They didn't handle like a real car. You're kind of all over the place trying to get control. And I think they're kind of having a little tongue-in-cheek with this, because this being a higher, ABV, and it being a little bit of a heavier beer, yeah, you wouldn't want to be drinking this and then getting right behind the wheel right away. That's kind of the point, I think, in my opinion.
And they've got MPH, miles per hour, 100.
Yes.
So I think that what they're just it's you can see they've got that power grid, that power bar here. So if you stare at this long enough, all you need is a steering wheel in front of you right now, and you think you're playing this game. And I can see down the road, and doing all the you got the Volkswagen there, and you're just ripping off the miles. I can really attest to I'm getting in this game.
And what's interesting is that a lot of companies now have started got into video games as a beer type of push. One in particular that I really love is Yards. Yards does this whole 8-bit set, is what they call it. And they have a Nintendo pack. It's Nintendo lettering, like the original Nintendo. But what was something creative is if you could actually scan the beer, you can play a game. They actually created a game
On your
for the
phone.
beer on your phone, which is so unique. And of course, Yards is a local brewing company. But let's crack this open.
All right, Bald Birds. And if you're saying I'm going to the Jersey Shore this weekend, and instead of going south, I guess you go northwest, that would take you to Jersey Shore, PA.
Right. A little confusing there.
Yeah. Bald Birds has a place in Havertown, so they do have some presence around.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I haven't been to the Havertown one. Have you been there?
I haven't been since it reopened because they had that fire with the. They had just moved in. They just opened, and then they had a fire. So I think it's been open maybe a year, 9 months to a year again. But we haven't been back. Really enjoyed what they had there at the time, and we're hoping to visit. But then tragedy struck. This is that IPA that I was ready to.
Yeah, and now when you smell this, this is where you get all the smells. There's nothing that is a fake note. There's nothing that everything's kind of in an interesting way fighting each other to say, "Hey, I'm the top note on here."
Here's the problem.
Sure.
The problem is me. The problem is me because this is the kind of IPA that I generally don't enjoy drinking. So I can't say in any other than it just the bitterness, it's not for me.
So let me explain what that is, okay?
Why it's not for me?
Why it's not for you? Because this is something that grew on me.
Okay.
How
many of these do you have to have before they grow on you?
You just have to try them a lot.
Okay.
You know? But I will say, initially, this is the kind of IPA I was initially introduced to that I thought I didn't like IPAs, period.
Right.
A lot of IPAs, and they say it here, are Centennial hops, which are really, really hoppy. And if they're really, really hoppy, they can give you heartburn. They can. It's almost like if you have too much acidity with like a tomato sauce. But also West Coast IPAs, although depending on how you feel about them, I've personally grown to actually like it. They usually try to have notes of pine or notes of things that you would normally get that would make you think of nature. So sometimes we'll have like notes of maple. Sometimes it will have notes of like a cinnamon, if you will. But like they try to go for, all right, you kind of have that nature feel. And when you think about it, just, all right, you're going to have something super hoppy. You're going to have something that is going to make sure that you're drinking not just a beer, but a craft beer. And it's going to remind you of pine trees. Either you're really going to like it or you're really going to be like, no, not for me.
Okay, so this is one I think you're going to really like this. And I'm going to say this one particularly, just not my flavor style, not my taste profile. But the wonderful thing that what you did there is, as you're explaining some of those nature, you're taking us out on a nature walk.
Mm-hmm.
I can gravitate and I can grasp the pine. I can get that cinnamon or that baking spice note. I got a lot of those things here that you talk about. It's just for me, I'm walking past this game and I'm going to Cubert.
Well, here's the big thing that I think for everyone who, if you want to really like beer beyond your basic stuff that you have, you want to go beyond the tap. This is the stuff you got to look for. So if you see West Coast IPA, because a lot of West Coast IPAs are that kind of feel, as soon as you see that on the label, you might want to think twice before you pick up a 4-pack. If you want to try and just pick up a single can or something, fine. Whereas for me, I know I like my lagers. I know when I see Galaxy hops, I want to like it. When I see Citra, it's 50-50, and we'll see this, I think, when we try to super duper double. It might surprise you. You might like it more than you think.
I'm always willing to try.
Sure.
And it's not, again, I know I've had other Bald Birds beers, and I've really enjoyed them. And I think again, it's just me. It's like that. It's like that. Was that the Huey Lewis song? Is it me? You know, that's
I,
me. You know.
I always put it like this: when it comes to breweries, right? Sometimes breweries are just like restaurants, where it's very rare you go to a restaurant and you legitimately love everything on the menu. When you have one that you do, that's awesome. But there's going to be a couple dishes that you're like, hey, they make it great, just not for me.
Absolutely. I get it. Look, there are many people in the IPA camp, and I can appreciate the beer, what they're drinking, but just like you could put me in the stout and porter camp all day, and I will probably say that there are IPA people that they don't like the idea of the stouts. It's not for them. It's you're on two different sides of the spectrum as far as I'm concerned.
It's interesting. I wish I would have known that. I'm not a big stout or porter person. However, and I would tell you, just sticking with the theme of local breweries. Now, this has nothing to do with a PopCon, but Victory Brewery, which I've recently moved to Chester County, so they're right in my backyard. They release seasonal porters, and one of them they released they partnered with Tasty Cake, and I haven't tried it yet. It's supposed to be like a butterscotch crimpy type thing, and if you love porters, that's great. I don't know how.
I feel like you're being condescending right now.
No,
I do. If you love porters, it's great for you. You know, go along, you little porter guy. Eat your tasty cakes.
Well, no. What I was going to get into is that I'm curious to see how I'm going to react to it, because as someone who doesn't like porters, I'm hoping I taste it and I go, I love it.
Okay.
You know,
all right.
Because one thing about beer, and I find this, to some degree with liquor too and wine. There's always that one or two in a certain thing. Wine is big for this, right? I know people that, I can't drink Merlots. But there's that one brand they love.
Of course.
And I think it's the same way with beer too. And that's where we've gotten at, where beer used to be considered kind of lowbrow. It's kind of getting up there when it comes to how they are respected, much like wine.
All right, here's my take. IPAs, that makes you Donny Osmond. And I'm going to stick with my stouts. I guess that makes me Marie Osmond. So you're a little bit country. I'm a little bit rock and roll. This, that's the thing. You talk about, I guess with an IPA, I wonder how many people consider that highbrow and kind of look down on those that you're just not IPA. You're not IPA enough, or where you're going. I would say, look, and it's not. To me, again, this is a good beer, and I know this is something you gravitate and enjoy. And there's probably tons of people they're selling this to that love this, can't wait for this to come out again. And there are others like me that are sitting going, all right, I'm going to walk past this one. And again, I'm going to Defender, I'm going to Space Invaders, I'm going to
no more racing games.
I'm going to Donkey Kong. That's where I'm going. I'm watching barrels come out. All right, now here's the thing: we set up the super duper double Citra. So let's see what the Hooker, the Hooker Brewing does for us.
Poor Thomas Hooker. She's known as the Hooker now.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Thomas Hooker? I mean, who is Thomas Hooker?
I don't know.
Okay, I didn't know if that was like, if you think Connecticut, maybe there's like a Civil War,
maybe,
something or other, or, are you reaching for your phone to look up history?
I want to Google. We'll Google it afterwards. Now, interesting. When you smell this,
wow, there's like I couldn't believe the head on it.
The head on this is crazy.
Wow, let's go. The Hooker's ready.
But it's not the smell is not as strong as what you got from the
all right, guess what? I like this.
Mm-hmm.
I like right off the bat, the nose. I got what I expected with the hops, with the bitterness. That's what was there. But what I also get from this, and maybe it's just the way I poured it, but it's so creamy.
It is creamy.
The mouthfeel on this, to me, and I think that's one of the things with the one we just did with Bald Birds.
Mm-hmm.
There was maybe if I poured it again, maybe I poured it wrong, but by having that head on here, what that does is, I believe it mixes as I drink the beer. It really my tongue has a different experience.
I don't think you poured it wrong.
Okay.
I think what it is that, and this is what I discovered when it comes to IPAs. You like Citra, you like Galaxy, but when you start getting to stuff that's heavier, the Centennial stuff, the Simcoe stuff, not for you.
Okay.
And I'm kind of the same way. And what happens is when you double up on something like this that doubled on the Citra, it does get creamier. So you're absolutely right.
This does have a sweet and fruity property to it, which I also am enjoying.
With the fact that they're going for the Double Dare theme, they want it to kind of be a little bit whimsical. Not so much where it hits you over the head with it, but that's the point of it. They even have on their label, it's not supposed to taste like a physical challenge, if you will.
Yeah, they said, on your mark, get set, drink this double IPA. We should have done that together. We missed the opportunity.
we were too
quick
saying it on the hooker.
Yeah. No, again, this is the beauty of it, where you pointed out right away when we started talking. Maybe you don't gravitate and IPAs aren't your thing, but try them. Don't pick up a 4-pack, pick up one.
Mm-hmm.
I might be, if I know I'm going to be hanging out with some people that liked, first of all, that liked the show that we're kind of talking about here. If they kind of had that Double Dare history to it, I think this would be fun to come over.
It's be fun, yeah, absolutely.
And hey, look what I found you. And at least I know we're going to have a good time with this beer.
And that's the thing. What's cool about all these beers, you have the various labels. Let's be real, beer can be very expensive if you want it to be, or it can be relatively inexpensive. None of these beers were super pricey. They all were within, between $1.50 and $3 a can.
So what I owe you now?
Yeah, you owe me nothing.
I think I owe you $2.75.
But I think what's cool about this too is that, and with beer in general, as well as fine wine and spirits, you discover something about your flavor palate when you try certain things. IPAs, and what I discovered in particular, and it's one of the reasons why I focused on IPA, because that's what made me fall in love with beer. It's a lot like bread. You might not like white bread, but you find out that you like pumpernickel, or you find out you like wheat, or you find out that, you know what? I really am a fan in the morning of the raisin toast bread. There's so many different brands. And so I think we do ourselves a disservice, much like how I said, well, I don't like porters. No, I just haven't found the right one. And the fact that I appreciate you being so open to try a lot of these, because as you learn more, then you could not waste your own money by thinking, oh, I'm just going to buy IPA, and not understanding that, hey, there's 40 different types of IPAs, and there's going to be some you like and some you don't. But B, the fact that you discover, hey, if it has this kind of hops, then I'm probably going to like it way more than if it has that kind of hops. And that's what's really, really cool. And I mean, you said we had the West Coast IPA, there's a New England IPA, there's single, there's double, there's triple. There's the ones with Citra, there's the ones with Centennial. I mean, there's so many different things. And that's just IPAs. We're not having guys with porters or lagers or any, there's so much. And what I really love about our area and how it's exploded with this stuff, whether you look at Philly or Chester County or Delaware County or Bucks,
let's leave out Montgomery County, shall we?
I will. Yeah, I mean,
let's do that.
Conshohocken Brewery, Bucks or Montgomery County too, obviously. But when you look at all the different breweries that they have there, it's so nice when you get on the bandwagon or something like this when it's new. And, yes, like Yards has exploded, right? And I look at Victory Brewing and I get told by people out of Chester when they remember it was a small thing. Now that's exploded to where they sponsor the whole county's, 4th of July parade. But even if you look at places like Stable 12 or Workhorse, or you look at things that have gotten a little bigger, such as your Conshohocken Brewery, or, Sterling Pig, 2SP, we can go down the list and probably be here forever. It's so cool to think that this kind of creative stuff is happening in your own backyard. And much like how when you find that nice local restaurant, you want to tell people about it, it's so awesome to have that. Not to mention, it's something that is meant to be enjoyed and be savored. So just like when you go, like I always use the restaurant analogy, you're not supposed to go and get your favorite meal and eat it in 5 minutes. You're supposed to sit there and enjoy it. And I feel that's what I love when it comes to beer. It's also what I love when it comes to what we look at with, as I was mentioning, with this PopCon that I'm associated with too. Beer used to be kind of either a lowbrow thing or a niche thing, right? I felt like Comic-Cons and stuff like that used to be the same thing. Now, you probably still live in your mom's basement when you think of people that were drinking beer, oh, you're probably not that successful. That's totally changed. Everybody from all walks of life go to Comic Cons, they go to Pop Cons. Whether they are people who are just starting out on their journey of their career and finding out what they want to do as far as, as an adult, or those super highly successful people. And beer has actually kind of had a parallel travel to that, where now there's a beer for everyone if you're willing to try it, including what we talked about prior to this podcast starting, the explosions of non-alcoholic beers that are now starting to be made by craft breweries as well. It's really an exciting time.
What I'm excited about is all those things you mentioned, whether they're porters or ales or stouts, and like the genre, lambics, and you can go crazy on many different styles of beer. And we just did a couple of them. And with Comic-Con, you can then expand on different genres, as we talked about with the horror and the comedy and the comic book stuff. There's so many places that last year you highlighted Back to the Future.
Right.
And I would have said right off the bat, how is that Comic-Con? Because all I think of with blinders on, comic books.
Exactly.
But now you introduce me to other areas. And to me, this idea of the Comic-Con and being expanded, you've expanded my knowledge, but seeing people go and they dress up and they allow their expression, their personality to come out. You have people that dress in one character and then change costumes like a couple hours later and they come back as something else. Or they have people that adopt like what's the old version of Wonder Woman that lady dresses up as?
Oh yeah, retired Wonder Woman.
This lady gets in such a character. You literally think that there's no way that this is who she's adopted everything. The way she talks, she runs around with a cigarette. I think she's got Geritol she runs around with.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's a character.
She's one of those people. She also was a finalist on America's Got Talent. So America recognized her. She's local here. And we've had other people too. There's the 501 Legion that has done a lot of stuff dressing up as Star Wars. We have the Spiderlings that all dress up like different types of Spider-Men. Because if you're a Spider-Man fan, there's a multiverse and different types of Spider-Man, but they do it for charity. So not only are they doing it, they're doing it for charity. We have a Delco Batman and Delco Spider-Man that on their free time become these characters and go to CHOP. They go to different fundraisers for kids. They go and they do it just to raise money. And that's what I think ultimately what's really, really cool about the Comic-Con, PopCon community is you get a chance to come out, even if it's just for one day, be yourself or not. You can come and show up and just watch what everything's going on, and maybe you find a piece of nostalgia from your childhood, or you discover that this year we're highlighting sci-fi. As I mentioned, we have Bruce Bossleitner, who Babylon 5. We have Tim Russ from Star Trek Voyager, and maybe you weren't a sci-fi fan, but go in there and you see how excited people are, and you see something. You might discover that hey, I always liked sci-fi, I just didn't know it, and that's kind of cool too, that, hey, if you want to show up and be a superhero that day, because people who get dressed up and they put time into their costume, people want to take pictures with you just as much as the stars.
That's right.
And it's a lot of fun. And then you find out that this person who dressed up like Thor also happens to be your local banker. Or, this person who dressed up like Pikachu from the Pokemon video games and really spent all this time on her costume also happens to be a paralegal. Last year, we had someone who actually had a booth who did all this wonderful artwork, all by hand. Turns out she's on media's, council for government. And that was her passion. So she had an opportunity to reach into her passion. She didn't care about how much money she made. It was more so just displaying my artwork. And if you want a piece of this because you like it too, here, take it. Have it in your living room. Have it wherever you want it. I want you to enjoy it. And that's the big thing when it comes to what's going on with beer, what's going on in the space of pop culture, especially with something like this where it's local. You get to express yourself and have fun. And man, do we need that more now than ever.
This idea of us sitting down and enjoying beer and talking about some of these connections to our childhood or video games and music and things. This came out of last year's Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
And you came up with the idea, and I said, Sheik, that sounds amazing. That sounds like a lot of fun. Then we got in the DeLorean. We took a spin around the block. And then we went back to the future. So this has been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing this more often. I'm looking forward to learning more about beer through somebody else's experience, somebody else's eyes. And I think this shares, if you're out there in the world and you have some of these in your local market and you want to mention some of these beers or some of the breweries out there that are doing some of these things, let us know about them. And if we can bring them on and talk about them as well, that'd be a lot of fun. This is a little bit of a new format. Dawn gets a reprieve. She doesn't have to talk on the podcast, so she's happy. But no, I think this has been great. This is a great idea. I can't wait to do more of these. And, as we get closer to Delco PopCon, I'm sure you're going to have more information to share with us. So we should do this again, and we'll bring more beers to the forefront.
Absolutely. And I will just, for the sake of plugging it, Delco PopCon, June 14th. It's going to be 10 to 6 p.m. at Aston Iceworks. Amazing venue. They have a bar in there. So you can grab a drink, and they're going to have, I think they have over 40 different beers, including a lot of your locals there. And we're going to have a bar in the middle of the floor as well, which will be awesome as you're checking out the various things that people are selling and getting a chance to speak to celebrities and see. We're not just doing that. We're having a bunch of different things going on. As I mentioned, we have the voiceover actors from a lot of the Peanuts gang stuff from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, you say that, and I'm thinking, want, 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 want.
Yeah, not the want.
Are we going to have those people?
No,
No.
we got the actor for Charlie Brown and for Lucy.
Okay.
So both of them are coming together. It's the Peanuts 75th anniversary, so we were very lucky to get them. As I mentioned, Bruce Bossleiner has been Babylon 5, who's been in Tron, a whole bunch of other things like that. Tim Russ, who's been in Star Trek Voyager, has done things as recently as he was part of the recent Lego video game, which was a big hit with the kids. We have so many other people who are coming. As I mentioned, James Stokes. We have some of the people who are returning from last year as well, too, as far as vendors. We have local vendors and local guests. There is a group called Concrete Comics based out of Lansdowne, PA, that are local comic book artists that are our personal guests. Console War Guys, if you're into video games, they do stuff about back when Genesis and Nintendo used to be back and forth with each other, the console wars with the 90s and 2000s. They're very, very popular. They're coming out to talk to us. As I mentioned, we have an actress that was been in Silent Hill and been in a bunch of other things. And I am being very bad about this because I don't have this listed in front of me, and she is going to kill me, and that's okay. But we also have cosplayers professionally coming. We're going to have a cosplay contest. We're going to make sure that we are trying to bring some other fun stuff that you can have too. And there's some other surprises too. All I'll say is it is in a place that a former Philadelphia Flyer owns. So being that it's Father's Day weekend, might be one or two sports things in there too.
I love the way you tease that out. Maybe you'll be able to talk about that the next time we get together.
Mm-hmm.
Sheik, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. All I'm going to say to you is Shazam!
Cheers.